good morning. It's very nice to have you on the call this morning. As I said, Adrian, calm down. I'm going to go through the slides. Please feel free to ask me any questions, but if you don't mind, out of respect for the fact that there might be something on the slide that I cover, I'm going to say park your questions into the Q&A, and as I get to them, either I'll tackle them or I'll tackle them towards the end. The other thing as well is that if you have very specific questions related to your business in particular, one of the things that I'll be telling you afterwards is that you can book a 20-minute complimentary business resilience call with me after this through my PA, Carrie, who I think is on the line as well. And I will go through anything that we've covered today that actually you think you need to talk about in a little bit more detail relating to your business. So firstly, what I want to do is just share today's slides with you so that you've got them in front of you. So as we go along, again, any questions or queries, please do give me a shout. Can you all see this? So hopefully you are able to see this. The slides in front. Perfect. Okay, great. So the thing that I said to you in my email or my messaging, however you came into the program, listen, this is a really tough time, and I don't think it's right for me to sit here and pretend otherwise. We know that the situation is really fluid and that it is changing on a day-to-day basis. For those of you, and I think the majority of you are in the UK at the moment, we know that there's going to be another announcement this afternoon that we're expecting from the Chancellor, who is going to announce some additional financial support for businesses, I think particularly within the hospitality sector, who have been a bit blindsided by the announcement yesterday afternoon by the Prime Minister that people should avoid pubs and restaurants, but actually he didn't move to ban them or close them. So I think we're going to get some clarity over the next day or so. So the first thing to say is this is a really fluid and changing picture. But what I've done with these slides, as have a lot of my colleagues from across the Action Coach family, is we've looked at some of the key things that we think you should be focusing right now to enable you to not only survive this period, but potentially thrive. As I said, this is a really temporary position that we're in at the moment, whilst really painful, but it's looking like it will be a fairly tight and contracted period of time rather than a longer drawn out process like the last great financial recession that we saw in 2008. I'm obviously caveating that by saying the situation changes regularly, but the thing that we need to do here is focus on planning rather than panicking. So I'm going to take you through 11 key steps, and again, please feel free to post some questions as we go through. It would also be great to know a bit about you guys. So there are nearly 50 of you on this webinar this morning, so please do post in the chat box who you are, where you're from, what you do, because you never know who in this webinar actually might want to get in touch with you to talk about how you can collaborate or partner together to get through this process. So please do use the webinar chat throughout this process. Now, the first thing I want to do is talk to you about step one as communication. Now, that is the first thing we need to do, but it's often the thing that most businesses, in their rush to try and do something and be quite reactive, often forget. Those of you who are members of the Better Business Network Facebook group will know that there was a great document that was uploaded yesterday by a strategic partner of ours, Jill Ball, who is on this call, who gave some really good advice about how we might want to go out and communicate. So if you're in the Better Business Network, I do encourage you to read that document in some detail, but it's really important that you, in a period of crisis, are always focusing on how you build your relationship with customers. We call them your raving fans, but also your followers. but I'm also going to include your staff here. It's really critical that the problem with today's society, particularly with this sort of crisis, is that the amount of information that's out there is so plentiful that actually some of it we know is correct and some of it we know is a best guess and some of it is actually downright inaccurate. And so the problem is your team are probably literally watching a combination of BBC News, Sky News, a bit of Twitter, couple of posts their mates may have put on Facebook. And so they are coming potentially to you, let's say first thing this morning, with a whole range of thoughts that are, on one hand, based on what the government is telling us and what science is telling us, and then another one based on what they'd heard yesterday from somebody who had heard something else. So it's really important that you understand that your team are going to have lots and lots of contrasting views about whether they should be working, whether they should be self-isolating, whether you should be making them work, whether or not you should be sending them home. It's really important that at this stage, you're as open and as transparent as you can be about the information you know to date. But I would always encourage you to make sure that whatever you're communicating out to your team at the moment is grounded in as much of the fact as we know now. So if you're not following gov.uk, for example, for daily updates, you need to. If you're not listening to the news conference, the daily news conference that takes place from number 10, you need to. I would spend less time listening to all of the opinion on the news and everybody's third and second hand sort of opinions, and just focus on the press conferences, the press releases from gov.uk, your local authority, and other trusted sources like banks, memberships associations, and so on. But from that, when you communicate out to your team, be really clear to them that it is a fluid situation and that you as a business owner will A, have their welfare at heart, but also B, that it is subject to last minute change. So your team have to understand that you're going to try and do what's best for the business as a whole, but that includes them as well. And try to encourage that when they go out to communicate, for example, if your team are communicating out with customers, that they are following an agreed script, they are following an agreed set of lines to take. If you're not sure about how to create lines to take or scripts, please do give us a shout or post on the Better Business Network, and there's people there that will be able to help you in terms of that. When it comes to your customers, it's really important that you try to update your customers as fully as you can, but without panicking them, but also without saying anything or using any wording that may lead them to think that something else is happening. So it's really important here that you stick to the facts, you stick to the facts as you know them, and you stick to the facts of what's happening for your business and what impact that will have with them as a customer. And we'll talk in later steps about how you provide greater customer service at this time, and you look at how you go over and above to make sure that your customers are getting the very best both feedback from you, but also the very best service at this moment in time. Particularly if you're in, for example, B2B, where your customers are sitting there thinking, oh my God, what do I do? Do I need to cut things? Do I need to stop things? And so on. So it's really important that you have these agreed lines to take with them as well. The other thing as well is your wider network. Remember that we talk about the idea of your network being your net worth, but it is going to be your networks that help carry you through, because your networks aren't necessarily people who are buying from you, but they are people who are raving about you. They are people who are recommending you. They are people who are there to support you. So your networks, whether that be a professional networking association, a membership association, a coaching community, whatever it is, your network has two roles for me. And one is that you can help pump out the right lines to take to your broader base of potential customers, of followers, and so on, using your network. So who in your network is already like a strategic partner that you can keep updated as well, so that they can go out and update their network of prospects for you as well. But secondly, your network is also there to act as a support. The reality is that it's at this moment in time where businesses need to come together and they need to support each other. The majority of businesses in the UK are small and medium enterprises, and actually you're going to be able to get through this by working really closely and collaboratively with your network partners. So absolutely now is not the time to stop talking to people who are on your side, who get it, who experienced. In fact, I was talking to somebody last night and they said that the silver lining to all of this is that we are all in the same shoes. So we all understand the pain, we all understand the challenge. And therefore, if you are experiencing challenges in being able to supply something, if you're experiencing challenges in being able to pay or do anything, now is the time to start communicating with your network more broadly as well. And that leads us into your suppliers and stakeholders. So if you're going to have any difficulty providing the service or the product that you've got at the moment, you need to decide how you're going to communicate that to your supply. But one of the things that I have to stress, which is what I always stress to my clients, is it's not just about the communication itself and telling them that you're going to struggle in terms of delivery or supply or whatever it might be, but actually give them an outcome, an agreed action to take, whether that's an alternative that you can provide for them. And again, we'll look at that in one of the later steps, or whether it's just you simply saying that, well, this is when we'll communicate with you. This is when we'll let you know. We'll keep you updated, and you do what you say you're going to do. So with your suppliers and stakeholders, what you have to understand is that whether they're supplying you or whether you're supplying them, you are going to want their goodwill over this period. So communicate with them clearly, communicate with them based on fact, communicate with them regularly as well. So you are going to have to spend far more time over the coming weeks talking to various people. But what you also want to do is you want to have some sort of updated outcome. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to provide it. This is when we expect XYZ product or service to be up and running again. This is when we're going to notify you. This is how we're going to let you know, and so on. So you really need to ground that in actions that you are going to take as a business to keep them fully prepared. And more broadly, remember that businesses are the pillars of our community. Businesses are the barometer of how healthy our communities and our society is. So what you want to do is recognize that people are going to be looking often to you, whether it be in your street, your town, your city, for how well you're doing, how you're supporting your staff, how you're delivering your product or service, how you're communicating out to people, and the positivity that you are taking in handling this crisis. If they see a business that doesn't talk to people, that seems to go into some form of shutdown, that doesn't communicate to the outside world, that doesn't use social media, emails and telephones to get out to people and put out good messages, they will instinctively think the worst. So remember, your team, customers, networks, suppliers, and your community, you need to be clear on what you're going to communicate, those lines to take, and then go out to them regularly, but then tell them the next time they can expect an update from you, or the next time they can expect an action from you, so that they're never in the dark. Step two, and I know it feels tough to do this at this moment in time, but the reality is that you need to be positive. It's really tough to sometimes sit here as a business coach and say to you, look, in adversity comes opportunity, but that is true. The reality is that if you look at economic history, there have been downturns and there have been casualties as a result of those downturns, but many businesses have come back stronger, more successful than ever. In fact, I was browsing LinkedIn yesterday, and the numerous examples that people were giving of businesses they had started in the last recession or the recession before that, when actually the common wisdom was don't start a business now. Whatever you do, this is not a good time to start a business. They were now telling about stories about those businesses that had gone on to get through the recession, who identified an opportunity, who pivoted really quickly, delivered something that the market needed, and 10, 15 years later was still going really strong. So it's really important that you remember that panic and worry is not going to help you at this moment in time. In that respect, it is what it is. The situation we are in is the situation. You've got two choices. You can either sit there and you can rail against it, and you can spend a lot of what I call with my clients mental calories, burning those mental calories on worrying about what the future may hold and what it might mean, or you can actually focus on trying to build win upon win upon win. So a lot of my clients will know that I talk about stressing small wins. And the reason being is it's great to win the big race, but actually what we often need to do to be able to win a big race is to win smaller milestones on that road. So it's now important that you, your team, if you've got a team, your partners, whomever, you are celebrating every hour a small win, no matter how small that may look like. So, for example, being a business owner myself of a couple of businesses, what am I going to say at the end of 10 o'clock? At 10 o'clock, well, look, at 10 o'clock, I'm going to sit there and say I've managed to deliver a webinar that has been of use to 50 business owners in the county. Now, does that mean that in the broad sweep of things that has turned the business around? Well, not necessarily, but it's a small win, because a small win keeps me positive. It keeps us going. It gives us an idea that we are one step closer to the bigger goal. So please, 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 whatever you do, find a reason every hour whilst you're working to find something that worked, that was positive, and a small win. We're going to grind out victory here as business owners if we focus on the small things time and time again. The other thing as well is the idea of how can you sell toilet paper. Now, listen, let me remind you if I need to, even though I'm not a medical officer, you don't need to stock up on toilet paper, okay? So if that's you, stop it, said with love. But you don't need to stock up on toilet paper. Now, what you've got to remember, however, is this is a really interesting view on how business runs. Because actually, what businesses in the here and now are actually doing very well as a result of the crisis. Now, that sounds an awful thing to say, but the nature of business is that things have to be provided. Products and services have to be provided. So what we're looking at here is you need to start thinking positively about how can I sell toilet paper? Now, I don't mean that you go out and you start doing it, but actually what you need to do is think about what products or services have you either got, or you've thought about introducing, or you've noticed there's a gap in the market based on the conversations you're hearing from people at the minute, where you think, actually, do you know what? We could spend a bit more time focusing on providing that. And the other point I make is, listen, I'm a big news fan. I love consuming news, but I have to remind you that there's a difference between fact and opinion at this stage. For me, I would stick to news conferences given by official bodies. I would stick to official documentation. I would stick to press releases from the government and so on, rather than looking and engaging in opinion-based conversation about what this may or may not do. Let's stick to the fact that you've got a business to run. You've got to get your head down at this stage, and you've got to focus on driving your business forward on an hour by hour basis. And therefore, spending time focusing on watching rolling news, where most of the time, frankly, people are just sitting there talking about what they think may or may not happen, or they're simply repeating the stuff that's already been said, is actually really bad for us. Stop listening to people's medical advice online. I've never known so many people to suddenly become experts in how to tackle viruses. as everybody seems to be on Facebook. Let's just stick with facts, because at this stage, fact and fact-based news is the thing that's going to get us through as business owners. So I do say to you, work out that you can be by telly at the point at which the daily news conference is done by the government. Because if you watch it on a repeat, what you'll often find on a repeat is the BBC or Sky will cut it and take out of it the most sensationalist statements to be able to roll some more news. So I always like to, when it comes to those sorts of official press conferences, watch them, and then usually about sort of 4:30, 4:45. That's when I watch it, and I watch it live because I'm hearing the words personally, directly, without anybody attempting to filter. So please, less news at this stage is better. And the other thing as well is that you are a leader. You are a leader in your team. You are a leader in your community. You are a leader with your suppliers, your stakeholders, your networks. They are looking for people to lead at this stage. If you are sitting there spending your time with your head in your hands, thinking negatively, thinking that things are going to go wrong, then the people that are looking to you for leadership at this stage are going to are going to naturally fall to that position as well. So if you're wandering around your office going, oh my God, I don't know what we're going to do, this is a nightmare, this is a disaster, your people will follow. Why? Because we naturally look to mirror the behaviors of those that we have put into a leadership position. So you need to go out there and you need to be positive. You need to recognize that it's challenging. You need to recognize that it's difficult at this moment in time, but they are expecting to see plans from you. They're expecting to see a positive vision of what the future is going to look like once you've managed to get through this position. And let me just give you a pointer, and let me just remind particularly those of you, whether you've got a coach, a mentor, a consultant, whomever, it is okay privately behind closed doors to share your concerns and your anxieties with somebody like that, a mentor, a coach, or whomever. Why? Because they're expecting that. They're expecting you to put it all out on the table, be concerned, ask any questions, feel nervous, put your emotions out there. And that's fine. But the minute at which you go out away from that one-to-one call, or you go away from that small group setting where it's people that you can share with, and you go out to your people, you absolutely need to switch into positivity. So please do remember that. Now, step 3 is to understand the cycles, right? And this is where you need to get a bit of a handle. Most economic cycles will go on a 7 to 10 year window. Okay, in our economy, we expect periods of plenty and sort of periods of feast and periods of famine on a cycle of about every 7 to 10 years. But what you've got to remember is when we go through this problem, economic cycles and crises go through the same sort of cycles as before. So we've had a period of summer. Okay, when business was growing, when business was doing really well, and we were talking about significant growth in the UK. That's like 2% or whatever, but I get that. But we were talking about good profit. Up until now, we've had almost full employment, even if that's been sometimes part-time, gig economy. But we've actually been in a period of summer. Okay, the stock market was going up. Everything was doing well by all the main barometers of business. But we know that that can't last forever. And what that means actually is that we have now entered a period of autumn, or what the Americans like to know as fall. We can see that if you literally go on to go to Bloomberg or BBC, whatever now, and you look at the stock market and you look at the performance, we know that the stock market has been tumbling. We know that at this moment in time, customers, clients are potentially cancelling on you or asking to postpone. We know that things are starting to get a little bit more uncomfortable, and that's what the autumn is. Autumn is a point where we have a correction and we start to see a reversing of growth. Winter is the tough period. Winter is the point at which we're really having to, in effect, hunker down, try to conserve and get our way through. Now, in most recessions, without getting into, and please forgive me if I'm sounding a bit like an economics lecturer at the minute, most periods, most winter cycles in recessions can be quite drawn out. So if you remember, those of you who remember the credit crunch and the financial recession of 2008, it took most westernized economies a long time to get through that and to start working its way out. In fact, particularly in the UK, we can say that probably it's only been the last year or so that we've really started to see more money coming back into the economy, more confidence in business, and so on. So in most recessions, there is a drawn out period of winter where we have to conserve, where we're getting really conscious about cash, where we're trying to do the minimum in terms of employing people and paying and things like that to see our way through. But this is the great news. And it doesn't feel like great news at the minute, but it is the great news. Spring always follows. There has never been a time in our economic history where we have had winter forever. We actually do go into a period of spring, and spring is a great time because that's the time at which people start to spend. It's the time at which we can start employing people. It's the time at which we can start investing in new things. So remember that spring is the start of in every cycle of us being able to grow again, ready for us to recoup the harvest not harvest, but recoup the benefits of summer. Okay, so we've been through summer, we're into autumn now. If the projections are right, and again, I'm basing this on economics and the forecasts of the central banks and so on, that this winter, if we call it that, is going to be fairly sharp, fairly uncomfortable, but it's going to be quite short-lived because of the temporary nature of the virus itself. Then that means that we should see a swing up into spring fairly soon. So our job, particularly over the next 90 days, is to manage the period of autumn and winter. So it's now that you need to start thinking about in autumn, what do we need to start doing with the business to get it ready for that period where it is going to be quite tough and cash is going to be quite tight. But actually also, what are we doing now to get ourselves ready so that when the economy picks up and people start wanting products and services again, we actually have now created better products and services that ultimately are far more profitable for us this time around. Step 4 is to focus on the process of change. And here you need to start thinking about how you're going to change who you are, what you do, how you act, how you behave as a business now. Too many people will wait to try and change their business in the period of winter. And that is not a good time to start making the change. Autumn is a good time because you're prepping for winter and then spring, and spring is a great time for change. So whilst we're still in that autumn period, now it's right for us to start getting ahead and ask ourselves those questions about how does our industry, how do our products and services need to change going forward so that we do business differently. So to give you some idea, I've always been a big fan as a coach of virtual groups and seminars. We have some fantastic systems through Zoom, through Skype and GoToWebinar, where we can do webinars, we can do breakout rooms, we can do virtual networking, virtual events. We don't need to physically meet as much now. In fact, a lot of my clients, particularly my one-to-ones, have only ever been coached by me on a Zoom basis. Now, there are other coaches out there who are now sitting there going, oh my God, I need to get in on this with Zoom. And absolutely, I think so, because what that enables us to do is support far more businesses that are more remote and are working at different times of days and locations and things. So now it's time for some of us to start leading the change in our own industries. And remember that if you want to change and you want your team to change and you want your business to change, one of the things that some of you will be aware of is what we call the formula for change. And so we say that change can happen providing these factors happen. And this is where I pretend that it's really scientific. And we call it a formula for change, but it's really straightforward. And when you understand this formula, you understand how to manage your people, how to support your customers, how to market better to them at this stage. So let me just quickly take you through that if I can. The D stands for dissatisfaction. So a lot of people who receive your product or service, let's talk about your customers at this stage. Okay, a lot of people who receive your products and services are dissatisfied about something in their life. They're worried, they're nervous, they're anxious, they're panicking about something in their life. But also alongside that, they have a vision of what a great life should be for them. So for example, people who do personal training, okay, the dissatisfaction for your customers there is that they feel overweight, they feel unhealthy, they don't feel like they're the type of person they want to be. And coupled with that, they have pictures or images maybe of when they were slimmer, when they were younger, when they were healthier, when they ran that race, when they competed in that sport, for example. So that all magnifies to make them feel uncomfortable about where they currently are. Where we step in as the provider of the product and service is to help them understand what that dissatisfaction looks like, to help them understand what their future could look like, but also give them some really easy first steps to enable them to start to change. Now, all of that has to be greater than what we call R for resistance, i.e. The status quo. So if actually it's far easier for people to stay as they are, you will never get change. So how do you apply this at this moment in time? Well, if you think about it with your staff, a lot of your staff probably are really anxious or nervous about the future. They know what business is like when it's great and when it's fun and when it's doing really well, and they want to get back to that. So your staff want to get back to a position where the business is going really, really well for them and for you. Now, what you've got to do is recognize their dissatisfaction, help them get inspired by the vision of what the future will look like once you've got through this all. And the first steps here are what are those things that you can start putting in place now that are really easy for them to get involved in. So is it, for example, remote working? Is it changing their working patterns? Is it requiring them to slightly do the product or service slightly differently? All of that has to be communicated. So I'm going to encourage you today to think about what things can you put in your business in terms of products, services, pricing, delivery, or staffing that can change, but change in an incremental way that enable your staff, your customers to come on board with you with that change. So a chunk of you will say, well, I've always delivered my products and services in this way. I get that, absolutely. But I now need you to spend a bit more time thinking, how could I do this differently? How am I going to provide this product or service in a way that actually makes my customers go, do you know what? It is a tough time at the minute, but actually, I really like how they do this or this or this. I also need you to think about how you change your pricing to reflect that. Please don't think that I'm sitting here saying to you that you need to do massive price cuts. But is there a way in which you can price things that actually are more attractive to your customers or your potential customers going forward? And we'll talk a bit about that in some of the later steps as well. But it also might mean at this stage that you change the whole business. So if you have been a business that has focused on doing a particular type of product or service, but actually there is another product or service you could be delivering at this moment in time that actually would be attractive to customers, then it may mean that finally that conversation that you've been putting off in your head about whether or not you need to carry on delivering what you're delivering, or whether or not you need to finally make the break and the change and change your business model, you need to do it. Okay, so be aware that change may also mean you being brave enough to sit there and go, my whole business model is now ripe for changing. And again, you're not on your own if you want to do this. None of these steps you have to be on your own to try and do them in isolation. And as I said, when it comes to change, you might just have to accept that you're going to have to break certain things to be able to get them better. So people who tell you if it ain't broke, don't fix it, at this moment in time, that's not necessarily going to work, because the way in which business is now going to be done going forward is going to be different. We're being told, according to some of the science and the planning, that this could be something that we're going to have to get used to in terms of waves. We're going to have to get used to in terms of potentially coming back in some way, shape, or form next year. So the way in which we have done business so far may not be the way in which we need to do business going forward. So accept that when it comes to change, you need to lead that change, get ahead, and don't wait for change to be forced upon you. Now, step 5, I want to give you some advice on this, but I do want to stress that I am not saying here arbitrarily cut everything. Okay, what you have to be careful about is how you cut back. The reality is we are going to have to make some economies in our businesses at the moment to enable us to get through. But what you don't want to do is do it in an unintelligent way. And what we mean by that is that most people who are struggling in business, when they get to a position whereby they're worried about their cash flow or their financial position going forward, they will arbitrarily look down a list of overheads and go, don't need that, don't need that, don't need that, don't need that, don't need that. And there's a challenge about that, because what happens is that in a crisis, the first thing that people generally do is they want to try and preserve cash, which is absolutely important at this stage. You want to try and preserve as much cash in your business, and they go, oh, I need to stop spending. But what they do is they cut things that actually are designed to be an investment rather than an expense. So if we take a big, huge sword to everything that we count as spending, what often happens is we do cut out the things that we could cut back on now, but we also end up reducing overheads in things that actually we shouldn't be cutting. So let me be clear about this. Nobody has ever cut their way to business growth. Okay, if you want to get through this and you want to grow your business, you cannot at this stage cut your marketing. You cannot cut your sales. These are overheads that are getting you out to market and still telling the market that you exist, that you have a product or service that they may want. You may need to change it, but if you cut those things right now, you are actually basically withdrawing from the market. And what happens is you get into a downward cycle. You tell the market that you're in effect not in business anymore. And they're not interested in hearing the nuances that you just temporarily put a pause on X or Y or Z whilst you're waiting. They think that you've got the smell of death on you. So be really careful not to cut. My advice to you is that you go back and you ensure that if you haven't up until now, you need to understand what the outcomes need to be from any investment. So if you're the type of business that has been guilty of chucking money at marketing or sales or advertising without actually asking, what are we wanting as an outcome? Don't cut it. Go back and ask the people, whether they're in your business or outside of your business, who are delivering that for you, to make sure that you are clear about the expected outcomes. Okay, so it's at this stage where actually you need to hold on to all of those business growth strategies. So please do not just take a list of your overheads and just start axing them, because that won't benefit you. Because in fact, for some of you on this call, you yourself are reliant upon other people being intelligent in terms of their cutting back. and you wouldn't want, and you will sit there yourself and go, I don't understand why they've cut this, because don't they realise that if they cut this at this moment in time, that's going to have an impact in the long term for them? Well, if you say that about your potential customers, then you need to be aware that if you're doing that within your own supply chain, that you're going to pose those problems as well. So what we really need to do is ensure, yes, cash is king. Stop spending on things that don't need to be spent. Get rid of unnecessary costs now. So if you're the sort of individual who does quite a bit of travel and as a result has done quite a bit of first class travel, then you may want to think about reducing that, because truly, do you really need to go anywhere first class, for example? So there are things you can do. You can maybe downgrade the type of hotel you have to stay at, rather than necessarily cutting it out altogether, because if you have to travel on business, you're going to have to potentially stay away. So look at how you can reduce unnecessary expenditure, but please, please, please do not just take a sword to all the things that will enable you to not only get through this time, but actually keep you going in the long term. But the other thing now is to renegotiate now. So there are helplines out there, and your accountant and anybody else, and we'll be able to give you the numbers of people like HMRC. Go and renegotiate with HMRC now. Go and talk to them about payment plans. Go and talk to them about ways in which you can offset some of the painful costs of some of your commitments to HMRC that you just may not be able to do right now. So this is the time where you go and talk to the tax man about how you can have some sort of payment plan or holiday or something that enables you to retain more working capital in your business. And all the evidence coming out of HMRC is they are very happy to start having those conversations. I can't guarantee you that they'll accept those conversations, but you need to start that communication, if you go back to step one, right now. The other thing to do is go back to your banks. Yesterday, Lloyds Bank announced a whole host of things it was doing for individuals and business owners in terms of business loans, credit cards, overdraft facilities, and so on. Talk to them now. Now, why do I say that? The reason why I say that is because soon, when we start to go into the really tough period of this, the banks will be inundated with every panicking business owner wanting to renegotiate. Do it now, renegotiate early now, before there is a big pressure upon the banks from individual businesses for relief. So go and renegotiate all of those outgoings to landlords, to HMRC, to the banks right now. The other thing there is you can slow things down, or you can postpone certain things. So rather than cancel things, if you need to postpone, then postpone. But remember, there is a difference between postponing the things that are unnecessary at this stage and the things that are essential to keep you going and on track. So be careful. Your supplier of a product or service that is also a small and medium-sized business locally is going to be far more impacted by you slowing down or postponing than HMRC is at this moment in time. So work out who you need to slow down, who you need to postpone, where it has the best impact both on your cash flow, but also doesn't, frankly, screw up the supply chain that you've got within it, okay? Because if you keep going out to people who are small businesses in your local area and you don't pay them, they have people to pay, they have businesses to try and run as well. And if you and a whole series of people all go to postpone and starve them of cash, the problem with that is in a couple of months' time, when you need them, you may well sadly find that they're not around to provide that product or service. So before you start going out and arbitrarily firing out emails to people to try and cut back, be very clear. What is essential? What do you need to help continue to get you through this process? And what else doesn't need to? And then think about how you're best going to position an offer to those people that they can accept, that enables you to continue to work with them, but also enables you to continue to have working capital and cash in your business. But please keep marketing and selling. The way in which you're going to get through this is by selling your way out of this crisis. If you look like you're shutting down, if you look like you're making lots and lots of people go who are in marketing and selling, it looks like to the outside world that there is a weakness to you. And what happens, we know, when people think that a business is on its way out, they stop trading with it and they go elsewhere. You don't want to give anybody the impression that you're not open for business. Number 6 is to extend credit. So this, I need to stress to you, is not me saying go out and get loads of credit and spend it all like it's going out of fashion. But the banks at the moment, credit card companies and so on, are still lending. There are still finance options out there for you, particularly if up until now your business has been a fairly healthy business. Get that credit line extended now whilst people are still lending, whether that be credit lines or credit cards. The thing that I'm going to put on here as a caveat is be careful about going to alternative financing that have quite draconian interest rates and terms and conditions. The reality is that the logic from a lot of people in finance and economics at the moment is extend your credit, because if you need that credit over the next coming few months, it will be there for you. But also, it means that when you do start to grow again in the months and years ahead, you'll be able to repay that credit. So I am not, please don't think I am on this seminar saying to you, go and get loads of credit cards and start spending them on pointless things like it's going out of fashion. But do extend your credit lines wherever possible, and get those credit cards and get those overdrafts sorted, ready, in place, should you need them. And this also applies to you personally as well. So if you have to, if you have to have a personal credit card just in case, hold on to it. Get yourself a 0% one at the moment and hold on to it in case you need it. Because what you don't want to do is be in a position where actually then there is a bit of a crisis in your cash, personally or privately. You don't have the ability to get credit, and then you are in a really tough, difficult position at that stage. And now is the chance as well to refinance if you have to. But if you're going to go out, use experts, use advisors, use brokers, and find the lowest rates as soon as possible. When it comes to step 7, and we're talking about staffing here, what we're really wanting to do is look at a whole series of options before you get to needing to make layoffs. There's a couple of reasons, B. If we as an economy start making lots and lots of people redundant, that will hit consumer confidence. And consumer confidence, combined with a potential lockdown, combined with any problems in the supply chain, will seize the economy up. The reality is we need to keep people in work, because if we can keep people in work, both we're providing our products and services through this time, but secondly, we're also enabling money to continue to be flushed through the economy, which in turn, God willing, still returns back to us through the purchase of products and services. So what you're really wanting to do at this stage is look at whether or not you can get people to take vacations if possible. So can they go on paid leave? Can they go on half pay leave? Can they go on unpaid leave? Try and find vacation options first, if possible, with your staff. If that is not possible, you've got 2 choices when it comes to staff. If you're going to get rid of staff, take them one, don't do it one at a time. Do not do it as a, oh, I'll get rid of you this week. Oh, no, it hasn't improved over the next fortnight. I'll get rid of you. Because that's death by 1,000 paper cuts. Your reputation will go out that you are on the decline and that you are hemorrhaging or bleeding really quickly. So what you're looking to do at this stage is, if you need to make staffing cuts and you've worked it out again with an expert, this is where you do need to talk to HR experts, then you either do it all at one time or you do it through natural attrition, i.e. people who are due to retire, people who are going to leave and find another work. Don't replace them, don't backfill them at the moment. So you've got a choice. You can either get rid of them all in one hit, or you can do it by attrition. And the reality is sometimes you just have to make those cuts and changes. As much as we don't want to, you have to. So I would always say try and make changes to their working patterns first to try and conserve cash rather than cut. But if you have to, you just have to get on with it. But in many cases, pay cuts are an option, and you'd be surprised in an economic crisis like this, how many staff, if they understand and you have communicated with them throughout the process, are prepared and willing to take some form of temporary adjustment to their pay or their hours to enable them to keep a job. Because for them, the other alternative is if they really stand their ground and say, no, I'm not prepared to negotiate on any of this, then actually what happens is they lose their job anyway. So don't underestimate the goodwill that you might already have with your staff, where they understand that they may have to take some sort of adjustment to their time, working time or their pay to be able to get through this. But you absolutely need to lead from the front as well. So suspend any bonus programs. If you are going to make any cuts or changes, it is really important at this short term that you are seen to be doing this in a very fair way. So suspend anything that could give the wrong impression to your team and could give them the impression that you're not all in it together. Step 8 is obviously you need to move to the work from home wherever possible. Now, I appreciate some people, this is not possible, but what you need to work out is if you're in an industry where you can't work from home, you need to work out in your default diary, your working diary, what parts of that diary are where you physically need to be out on a job, and therefore what precautions and health and safety requirements do you have to have in place to enable you to do that element of the job. And then when you're physically not needed in that particular site or location, you then need to have a work from home plan in place, which has the right technology in place, whether that be video conferencing, Skype, all that sort of stuff, to enable people to not unnecessarily have to come to a location. So you need to start thinking about how often are you going to have meetings. If you're going to do communication regularly with customers, suppliers, teams, whatever, how are you going to do those meetings? So if you haven't yet ever used things like Skype or Zoom, we will talk to you in the Better Business Network about those systems and how you can use them. Some of them are absolutely free for certain periods of time, like 40 minutes in one hit. So we will show you, if you don't know how to do online stuff, how to use some of this technology. We've got people in the network who can give you advice on apps that you can be using, software and systems that you can be using. If you have been up until now manually doing your accounts on spreadsheets or books or bits of paper, now is the time to have that conversation with your bookkeeper, your accountant, about how you properly use Xero, Sage, QuickBooks, whatever it might be. If you've been doing lots and lots of bits of receipting, where you've got lots of bits of paper, now is the time that you might want to look at something like Receipt Bank, so that you can cut down on all the bits of paper that don't then need to be transitioned. So this is the time for you to start thinking about all of those systems and processes you've got in the business that require manual or face-to-face or bits of paper. How can you replace them and speak to the right people to get advice on what software, systems, technology you need to use? The other thing is as well, work from home does not mean holiday. It does not mean catching up on all the episodes of Madam Secretary on Sky Atlantic, right? This is about you continuing to offer great customer service from home. So you need to ensure that if you're going to work from home, that you have set up a room or a space which has been designated in effect as your office. And it's the same for your staff. What you want to get your staff to do is allocate a room or an area which they use as an office, rather than them just sitting on the sofa in front of the telly. It's really important at this moment in time that we are as productive as we can be. And again, I've said to you about banking and electronic systems, so I'm not going to go onto that too much, but you do need to think about those as well. Communication, Zoom, Skype, all of those systems and software. But again, we're going to be giving support throughout that, and there are experts in the network who can do that for you. But be aware that working from home may be weeks, but it also may be months. So you really want to have a plan in place that enables people to start to work from home more as a default rather than as just a very temporary solution. Step 9 is then how you can add online or delivery to what you do. And it's really critical here that for some of you, you need to think about whether or not you have if you have a physical product, you need to think about how you add delivery to this. So if you're a business where people come to you, how are you actually going to get out to other people? Because the reality is, as we start to do more social distancing, people are not going to be able to come to you. So, for example, I've been talking to restaurants who obviously are now being impacted by being, the government advising that people can't go into them. Well, the thing is, up until now, a lot of those restaurants have actually not wanted to get involved in the world of delivery. But if you've got staff, you've got food, you've got a kitchen, now is the time for you to start delivering. Now is the time, if, for example, you're a restaurant and you haven't done it before, to get on the delivery wagon, because the reality is that we know there's going to be a spike, frankly, in deliveries, takeaways and things like that when people start to self-isolate, because they're either not going to be able to get out, or there's going to be problems with the home-based Sainsbury's shop and things like that. We know that people are going to start ordering Domino's. They're going to start looking at their Just Eat apps and things. The evidence has already suggested that people are starting to see a spike in those delivery in those delivery mechanisms. So that's just in food. So think about what do you offer at the minute that requires people to come to you, and can you either turn that into an online offer, an online meeting, an online conference, an online something, or physically add delivery to them, whether it be online or on the phone. And for some of you, that will require you to alter your Facebook page or your website or whatever it is. But again, you can get that done if you speak to the right people fairly quickly. But as I said to you, there's staffing changes. Remember, your staff aren't necessarily going to come into work, and your customers aren't necessarily going to come to you. You will have to, in some way, shape or form, go to them. I want to get onto this one, which is really step 10, which is about marketing and selling. I've said it before and I'll say it again. You're going to have to keep marketing. You have to let the world know that you're still here, you're still in business, you intend on trading, you've been here before the crisis, you're going to be here during the crisis, and you're going to be here after the crisis. So if anything, you are increasing, not decreasing, the amount of conversation you are having with the world through your marketing. But at this moment in time, that doesn't mean that you don't negotiate rates. So if you're about to go into, if you want to go into a magazine, or you want to go for something online, or you want to advertise, go and negotiate the rates. A lot of people within marketing will be prepared to be flexible with you, because they want to work with you in the long term. They want you potentially to work with them on a long-term basis, and we all want to help each other. So we're all in the same position. So don't be afraid to both increase marketing, but also talk to them about how you can make whatever limited money you've got, go further at this stage. Remembering that once we're over the temporary thing, you are going to have to pay more, and you're going to have to go back up to a commercially acceptable rate, because everybody needs to get their business back on track. So if you're looking to market and sell out to your prospects, create new offers, create new rates, create ways of bringing them into your business in the interim that enables them to start working with you, that enables you to bring in cash in the business and to continue operating through this period of time. You can either sit there and say, I'm not going to offer new offers, I'm not going to offer new rates, my rate is my rate, my business is my business through this crisis, but then watch what will happen when they all decide to walk with their feet, or choose with their feet. If you've been on one of my seminars or been to one of my workshops or you're a client of mine, you'll know we talk about the 5 ways, the 5 ways methodology. So these are the 5 key numbers you should be measuring in your business. Make sure you absolutely are. If you're a client of mine, or you know me, or you've been on one of my webinars, get in touch with me. If you want to go through that again, we can talk about how to measure your 5 ways in more detail. But wherever possible as well, even if it means that you offer a rate or a special offer at the moment, get cash up front wherever possible, because it's cash flow that's going to get you through the next few months. And step 11 is, don't forget your repeat business. Your existing customers, frankly, are your best customers. And so you want to be positioning yourself at the minute where you can create deals that are just for them. If your existing customers are still trading, are still operating, and they know they want to continue to trade, what is it that you can offer for them that's a great deal, that's just for them, to encourage them to continue being a customer with you through this time? So can they buy something in bulk? Can they get a great rate if they give you cash up front for something, for example? So they might know that if they bought 12 months of something now and it was at a phenomenally great rate, actually it's going to benefit them, because if the big bit of the crisis next 3 months, they'll have 6 to 9 months of getting real value from that offer because they've already paid you in advance. But keep those customers at all costs, because they are the ones who are going to help you get through this time, but also help you grow afterwards as well. So communication with your existing customers is vital. I am attempting at this moment in time to talk to my customers on a daily basis, and we're adding additional stuff. We're adding additional webinars, we're adding additional materials for them. We've got a lunch and learn today with them about how the budget affects them. So we are trying to communicate out with our existing customers on a day-to-day basis, because remember, 80% of your revenue always comes from 20% of your customers. And so these are the people that you want to retain, love, look after, and support however you can through this time. Now, I said there are only 11 steps, but actually I'm going to give you a 12th step before I conclude and take any brief questions and answers. Firstly, this is a time when we all need to pull together, guys. So over deliver on your customer service. The old rules are out of the window. What we need to do at this stage is we need to support our customers through however we can. That doesn't mean that we do all our products and services for free, because we've all got our own cash and we've all got to keep our businesses trading. But what extra value can you give your customers at this stage that makes them feel like you've got their back, that you're supporting them, you're helping them through, you're doing whatever you can to help them navigate the next few months? So do what you say you will do, over deliver, don't over promise, but over deliver wherever possible. And then there's those normal advice: clean everything, don't touch people. You know, I'm not allowed to handshake, you're not allowed to do any of that stuff. It's all elbow bumps now. If you're out in a place where you've got physical location where people are still coming to, provide sanitizer, but put your people first. What people will remember at the end of this crisis is not the crisis itself. They will remember how you treated them. So customers will remember the common sense and compassion that you showed them. The staff will remember the common sense and compassion that you showed with them. They will remember the flexibility that you gave them as an employer. So remember at this stage that you need to put your people first. Be nice to people, relax, do not show too much panic or worry. Focus on what are the things you can do, the 5 key things that you can do to keep driving your business forward. Keep doing small wins, keep showing compassion, keep listening to your market, look at new products and services, communicate with them regularly, but let them know that you're around. And finally, do not buy lots and lots of toilet paper. That is not going to help you. Okay, so remember, all of those 11 steps are important, but they need to be coupled with both common sense and compassion. So to finish up, what I want you to do separate to this webinar is to list 5 ideas that you are going to take action on today. So those 11 steps, and we will send out the recording to you guys later, so you've got a physical copy of it. But I need you to list the 5 ideas you want to take action on. You won't be able to do everything because all your businesses change. So please don't, think, oh my God, I've got to try and literally do everything. What are the 5 key things from that you believe you can take action on today? The other thing I need you to do is arrange your complimentary 20-minute business resilience call with me. So you'll see adminessex@actioncoach.com is Carrie's email. She will be booking my time out because I am largely working from home or remotely at the minute. So I am booking in slots with people to help support them adopt and talk through some of the ideas that you need to take action on today. And then the final thing is that we are running a virtual growth club on the 2nd of April, which will enable you to build your own 90-day business resilience plan. That is a paid event, guys. I can't do absolutely everything, as you can imagine. I'd love to, but I can't do everything for free or complimentary. But if you want to join us, it's online, full day with advice and expert and panelists and things, and then you'll create your own 90-day business resilience plan for Q2 of this year, April, May, June, and beyond. Then please do give me a shout, and I'm happy to talk to you about how that works and investment levels and things like that. But the first 2 things are really critical. List those 5 ideas you need to take action, arrange that complimentary call with us so we can implement it, and let's stay positive, full of love and compassion for whatever we are all doing. Communicate regularly, and remember that you need to sit within your network and your community at this stage. Now is not the time for you to retreat, for you to cut everything off and to try and do this all by yourself. We know that when times are tough, actually we need other people around us more than if we try to do it alone. So I'm going to stop there, but I am happy to stay on the call for a bit with anybody that has any Q&A for me. Please do feel free to ask any questions. I am not going to take questions to do with viruses though, because I have no knowledge, I'm guessing. But I'm happy to answer any business related questions. If it's a specific one to your business, then of course you can do the 20-minute call and we can go through detail. But if you've got some broad questions, please do feel free to ask. I am also going to run this webinar again. So if you have found this webinar valuable, please do let people know on your networks, Facebook, LinkedIn. This is me. Every few days, I'm going to give an hour of my time to go through this webinar, to go through these topics, to support as many people in my community as I can. So if you found value in it, please do tell people that and that they need to be on it. And I will be later releasing another date and time for it later this week. So please do let people know that they need to jump on it. If you've got any questions, I'm going to stay on for a couple of minutes. If not, wish you lots of love. You don't need any luck because it's just about planning, hard work, and not panicking. All right. Any questions from the ether except where you can buy toilet roll, Carrie? I don't know is the answer. Haven't a clue. If you know, please let me know because I can't find any. I'm going to use leaves soon, I think. Oh, well done, Jill. Well done. Okay, so if there are no actual questions, that's absolutely fine. I'm conscious we're slightly over, but hopefully that was of great value for you. Please do get in touch with Carrie, book your call, and I will speak to you all very, very soon. Have a great day. Have a great day in business, and I'm always here. I've got your back if you need me. Take care. Bye-bye.